feel stuck in life, if you feel like you have a big decision and you don't know what to do, this episode is for you.
I help people to be more successful in their careers.
How often do you find people in that situation where they want to make a big move, but they feel stuck and just can't move the needle?
They're either in one of two situations. They're either successful in their role, but they're feeling frustrated or bored, or, am I really going to keep doing this for the next, 5 to 10 years? Or they're feeling that they haven't had as much success as they would like to have, and they're feeling frustrated because of that. I think this situation actually gets worse for people as they get older. It's going to give up. And then, as I say, I started thinking about it differently. Instead of thinking about what I was going to give up, I started fast forwarding mentally sort of 10, 15 years into the future and thinking about what I was going to regret not having had a go at.
Some companies, they've opened that door to have that conversation. If you're not finding satisfaction in your role, maybe they might try to offer some other thing.
Your character strengths will be different from my character strengths, but these are the things that are important to you, values, those sorts of things. But they're the things that make you you. And I always start there. But if you don't actually enjoy doing that, or you find that you can do it but it kind of drains you of energy, you're not going to be happy and fulfilled in the next role doing those sorts of activities.
What are some things team leaders should look at in making sure they build a high-performing team? Hi everyone, welcome once again to the GrowthPlug Podcast. On this podcast, we talk about how to live by design and not by default. I'm sure you've heard this so many times, and every time we get to talk about this, I'm super excited. Once again, I'm your host, Wilson Obeneme, and today we have two Wilsons. And I'm excited about this one because we'll talk about Wilson's stuff, maybe Wilson's rule as well. But I have someone here who is going to share his own story. I think he has an amazing story, and what he helps people do right now is something you can relate with. If you feel stuck in life, if you feel like you have a big decision and you don't know what to do, this episode is for you. Welcome, Mostyn. Nice to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, good to be here, Wilson. And really, really pleased to be here, particularly because your pod is all around, intentionality, people making big decisions, doing things sort of proactively. Really, really pleased to be here and have the chat with you.
Great. And we've been planning this for a while, but things just come up, and I'm just glad that finally we get to do it today. But how are you feeling? I know the weather is not so gloomy. I was hoping for a bit of sun. But how are you feeling?
No, all good. Kind of getting into that sort of autumn phase now, sort of nights drawing in, but it's it's good. It's nice and cozy in here. So
amazing. So the way we always start this is our guests telling people who they are in their own words and what they do. So over to you.
Yeah, so I do a variety of things now. So I help people to be more successful in their careers, and that can be in the particular role that they're in at the moment, which I do through executive coaching, and also help people to be more successful in their careers by making some pretty big decisions about what they're going to do next, which is a tricky thing for people, particularly as they're progressing through their careers, working out what to do if they're not sure about what they're doing at the moment. Those are the two main things that I do from a sort of career development perspective. And I also do a lot of talks at companies on high performance for professionals, which are really around helping people to change how they work so that they can be more effective in their roles. The benefit for the employers is that productivity and performance goes up. The benefit for the employees is that they go home feeling happier and more fulfilled about what they've done each day. A win-win. So a variety of different things, but all around, sort of career and performance and high performance, that sort of thing.
Amazing. How often do you find people in that situation where they want to make a big move, but they feel stuck and just can't move the needle? How often do you?
I'm noticing it more and more at the moment. And I think that's partly because I think people are realizing that they maybe have more agency than they used to think that they have. And it's also sort of a bit of sort of confirmation bias in where I'm now seeing more of that because it's also more closely aligned to a relatively new part of my business called Atomic Ambition, which helps people to make big career decisions. So I think it is getting more prevalent, that sort of issue that people have and actually wanting to do something about it. But I'm also very conscious of the fact that I'm probably just seeing more of it because it's closely related to the Atomic Ambition side of my business.
We'll talk about Atomic Ambition, but do you also think it's because maybe people are more open now to talk about their challenges. I think I don't want to believe it's only in this generation where people feel stuck. Right. But it seems more people are really realizing that that is the situation instead of just downplaying it. So do you think maybe our current setup in the world is really getting people to speak up and say, hey, I'm actually stuck and I need help?
I think the environment is more conducive to that. So people probably feel more comfortable having those sorts of conversations, or at least airing those thoughts with their friends, with their family, maybe with their boss, with their, in work, people feel a bit more confident about having those sorts of conversations, maybe. I think there's still an impact from COVID, when people started to reassess what they were doing with their lives and their career. Obviously, that has a big impact on sort of people's thought processes, the impact of people working from home or working in the office. That's forced some people to have a think about, what is it that I actually want to do from a career perspective, but also the meaning that I want to get from my life. I think there's still a lot of people going through those thought processes as a result of, COVID, sort of 5 years ago now. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's kind of more prevalent. I think there's also an element of, if you look at your non-work life, so things that you do for fun, or for, even like, there's a lot of things that are very convenient and easy these days, and we expect just a lot of things to work, like your phone or your delivery service or whatever. There's a lot of things that make our lives a lot easier these days. And I think when you've got all of that sort of stuff going on outside of work, I think it changes how you think about, well, shouldn't my work be easy and convenient and enjoyable too? And if there's a disconnect between those two things, it kind of makes you realize that one is perhaps, like your work, is maybe not as easy or convenient or as enjoyable for you as some of this other stuff going on outside of work. So I think that's a factor as well.
No, that's a good point. I haven't thought about that, but it's true, because for most people, it's like, outside of work, it seems like I have fun, but at work, it seems like I struggle. And the dilemma they face is it affects, then it spills over to their personal life, because if you're not working, like you're not finding fulfillment at work, over time, you spend like 8 hours at work, you come back and you're really drained. And it's like, I've lost my mojo. All the things that give me satisfaction, joy is all taken away. So I think that's very spot on. If you compare what life is like outside of work and with work, it's clear, like one, I find joy, the other I don't. And that shouldn't be the case ideally. You should like enjoy what you do. So let's talk about Atomic Ambition. What led to that whole creation, which is what you're...
Yeah, so Atomic Ambition it's a program that I run at the moment. And in a month or two, it's actually going to be a self-serve digital course as well. But the purpose of it, or the problem that it's solving, is, I mean, a lot of people who they're either in one of two situations. They're either successful in their role, but they're feeling frustrated or bored, or, am I really going to keep doing this for the next, 5 to 10 years or whatever, sort of time period is right for them. Or they're feeling that they haven't had as much success as they would like to have, and they're feeling frustrated because of that. And I think this situation actually gets worse for people as they get older. Because if you think about the structure of the workforce, say, people enter the workforce, say, in their 20s, right? And all kind of start at about the same level. As you get older, then some of those people will become, quite senior, and they'll be the leaders and, on the executive team or the leadership team or the management team of a particular organization. But not all of those people can be, right? Just for, just the numbers, as people get older, not everybody's going to, have that sort of top job. So therefore, I think you've got across, population as they get older, you've got some people who are senior and maybe they're satisfied. Fine. That's great. Perfect. Relatively small number of senior people. I meet quite a lot of those who are doing very well, very successful on paper, but they don't really enjoy what they're doing. But then I think you've got most other people who haven't necessarily got one of those senior roles, feeling that, perhaps I'd be able to thrive in a better role or a different role or a different working environment, maybe a different company doing a different sort of thing. And I think there's a much bigger sort of part of the population which falls into that category. So the problem that I'm trying to solve is really helping people to get out of either of those situations so that they can be happier in what they're doing from a career perspective. So that's the that's the purpose of Atomic Ambition.
Hey, fantastic. And we'll still dive into that. But most times we admire people who are really at the top and it's like they have everything figured out. The good thing is you get to work with some of these people right now. On paper, like you said, everything is looking fantastic. What are some challenges they typically face? Because when people see them, you're like, hey, this person's life is perfect. And I think sometimes it puts on maybe unnecessary pressure on people who haven't achieved that because they're like, oh, look at this person looking nice with his suit. Look at how always smiling. There's a chauffeur driving her around. Yeah, but what from your work, working with some of these successful people on paper, what are some other challenges they typically face?
Yeah, so I think the situation some of those people are in is that they feel that the success that they've had should have made them happy. And it can be quite short-lived. I think if you've got a particular goal or aspiration to, get to a particular level, for example, if we're talking about seniority, and you get there and you feel good for a while. But then sometimes the shine can wear off, and therefore, you say you're looking good on paper, but you're not necessarily enjoying, kind of the day-to-day activity that you might like the status, you might like the pay, you might like the fact that you're the boss, or you're kind of more in control of what you're doing and other people in your team are doing. But if the actual content of the day-to-day work isn't actually lighting you up, then that's that can be a bit of a trap. I think one of the other things that people don't necessarily realize about particularly quite senior people is you think, okay, well, you get to a senior level, you're the boss, you can decide what to do, right? I think unless you're, running your own, like, quite small company, most senior people have way less control over what they're doing day to day, hour to hour, than people who aren't in those roles think that they have. They think, oh, this guy, he can decide what he wants to do. Nearly all the senior people that I work with, if you look at their calendar for the next 3 months, their calendar is blocked out, right, with things that they really have no choice but to do. There's not that much control that they have in terms of things that they can take out, not do, to a certain extent, things that they might want to do, but they don't necessarily have the time to do. So I think that's one of the common challenges that those sort of people have. They get to that level, looks really good on paper, but actually the control, the autonomy, the enjoyment of the day-to-day stuff isn't maybe what they thought it was going to be. And the converse for other people kind of looking up and sort of aspirations for those roles is they don't necessarily understand it, because a lot of people don't talk about this stuff, right? So those are challenges. But I think there are, when you get to, well, any level of seniority, doesn't matter if the most junior person or the most senior person, the thing that really makes a difference is that the right role for you? And I think a lot of people will either fall into a particular career, or they'll take a particular role because it is the next logical step on the ladder. So, taking that next step, that more senior, bigger role, bigger responsibility kind of, makes sense. But if the environment or the role that you're doing now isn't one that, really lights you up, then just kind of doing a bigger version of that is unlikely to really shift the dial for you. But that's what most people do, right? If you think about normal career progression, you say, okay, I was good at that, so I'll do more of that, or take a more senior role doing that. But if you weren't that excited about that particular thing, and that's one of the reasons why you want to change, just taking the next step up won't necessarily give you the satisfaction that you're looking for.
Indeed. And you mentioned something I don't think this is talked a lot about. Like, we don't talk much about this stuff, and that's why people keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And for some people it works, like you said, you might find what really works for you and you're good. But I think anyone who does such a profile, high driven job for a while, at some point you'll be like, I just need a break or something. So that's why, like, really good to have you on the show, talk about, because you work with people at that level, and hopefully we get some of them to actually come and share, because sometimes the employees look at them as, hey, this person is not empathetic to me, like I'm going through stuff, but they are actually going through stuff.
Yeah, it's just different stuff, right? Yeah. Everybody's got their own thing. But look, this isn't to say that, does that mean that, there's no point in going for a more senior role, or trying to, get to a particular position that, is aspirational for you. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I think the thing to make sure you're doing is, are you chasing the right sort of role? Is it the right opportunity for you? Because when you get that to work, when you get that fit, what you'll find is, or most of the people that I've worked with, what they found is they will do that role and be really excited and really passionate about it for 2, 3, 4 years. And that's that's a great sort of period of time to be sort of really excited and passionate about your role, because you go into it and it's new and you have a relatively steep learning curve, irrespective of the fact that you might have done something similar before, or you might have done a similar role in a different company. Now you've moved to a different company. Every role is different, even if it's quite close to what you've done before. So there's normally quite a steep learning curve. And that's really exciting if it's a role that, is a good fit for you. If you're an ambitious person and you like to, have that progress and, sort of step up in your career, what I've then found is once people have done that for maybe 2, 3, 4 years, they get really competent at doing that particular thing. So they've gone through that steep learning curve. They're really confident as well at doing the role. And then what starts to happen is the growth curve starts to plateau. And that's cool for a bit. It's nice to be in a role that you know what you're doing. It's easy. You know the people. You're still getting enjoyment from it. It's nice to enjoy that period for a while, right? Because you kind of earned it. You've earned it going up that steep learning curve. But then for that sort of person, they're then going to be looking around, okay, what's next? Yeah. I can't just keep doing this particular role for the next 5 to 10 years because, yes, it might have worked for me for the last 3 or 4 years, but I'm now going to start to get a little bit bored and I want to see what's next. And that to me is a really positive part of ambition, and finding out what that next thing is going to be for you has a huge impact on your enjoyment of the role. And like you said, has a knock-on impact on your personal life as well.
Indeed. And this will lead us straight to your own story. When we connected earlier, you shared your story, and maybe you want to start. You were also I think you were having the career most people look forward to, but you had your own moment where you had to look inwards and make a decision. Do you want to walk us through?
Yeah, I can explain a little bit about that. I used to be a partner at KPMG, one of the world's biggest professional services firms, and I joined there as a graduate and I worked my way up to partner. It took me 15 years to get to partner, and I stayed as a partner for 7 years. So I spent 22 years at KPMG. It was like fantastic career, really, really good company. Recommend it to anybody. I had a great time there. But for the last few years that I was in the firm, I was very fortunate. I had 2 jobs. So half of my time I was working with financial services companies that were clients of KPMG, delivering services to them. And the other half of my job, I was on the leadership team as the head of people for a big part of the firm in the UK. And it made it very obvious to me that it was the people side of things that I really enjoyed. And I think, if I'm being honest with myself, the delivery of the work to the clients is quite technical. And I was good at the technical stuff that you had to do in order to deliver the work to the clients. But the enjoyment that I got from the role were the people things. So it was the development of the team. It was the client relationships. It was the people side rather than the technical side that I really enjoyed. So enjoying the people side of the client delivery. I was also doing this big people leadership role. And it made me realize, okay, what I really enjoy is people and sort of personal and professional development. And I started thinking, am I going to stay at KPMG until I retire? So, joined from university, am I going to stay until sort of partner retirement age for partners in the UK is 55, and I was around 40 when I was thinking about this. So I was looking at the next 10, 15 years, and I was thinking, am I going to stay here till I retire? And I thought that would be a great career, right? I would have done even bigger clients, probably would have done even bigger internal leadership roles. But I realized that the personal and professional growth that I was going to have in that role wasn't plateauing as I just described, but it was, it was definitely getting less steep. And I'd had a really steep learning curve up until partner. And I thought, well, am I actually going to enjoy that for the next 10, 15 years? Because I think a large part of the enjoyment I had was that, that personal, professional growth and seeing that development. So I thought about this for a couple of years, and it's quite hard to leave that sort of role because it's high status, very secure role. You get paid a lot of money. So most people that make it as a partner, don't leave. They stay until retirement. But I was thinking about this and kept thinking about those things that I was going to give up, sunk costs. I know there's the sunk cost fallacy. It shouldn't really matter how much time you put in before, but, it was there, even though I'm aware of all these sorts of things. And then one day, it was summer 2021, and I realized that I'd been thinking about it like completely the wrong way. And the thing that I was thinking about doing was just coincidentally, I'd done a professional coaching qualification a couple of years previously, mainly because a friend of mine was doing the course and she said, I think you'd really enjoy the syllabus. And it was all about neuroscience and psychology. And I was like, yeah, well, I'll do that. That looks cool. So I did that. It's like proper, like 10-month qualification. And when I did that, I realized that I really enjoyed coaching people one-on-one and that I seemed to be pretty good at it. And I think that it wasn't intentional, but I think that planted the seed. I was like, maybe I could do something else. Anyway, fast forward a few years and I'm thinking about whether I should leave. I thought, well, perhaps that's what I could do as a kind of like a second career. But I was fixated on all this stuff that I was going to give up. And then, as I say, I started thinking about it differently. And instead of thinking about what I was going to give up, started fast forwarding mentally sort of 10, 15 years into the future and thinking about what I was going to regret not having had a go at. When I thought about it from that perspective, it completely changed my thinking of it, because I thought, if I stay here and I leave 33 years later after I first joined, and this is all I've ever done, on paper it's a great career. And I will have enjoyed most of that time. But from a life design perspective, as well as a career design perspective, I thought I've actually got more to learn, more to experience, more to do, more to give. And therefore, when I thought about it from that perspective, I didn't want to get to, partner retirement age and look back and think, yeah, perhaps I should have, had a go at that thing that I was thinking of, sort of 10, 15 years ago. And that it didn't make it easy for me to leave, but it certainly made it easier. And I had my resignation letter drafted and it wasn't being sent anywhere. So the sort of thing, you write it, you're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to pull the trigger on that at some point, but I couldn't quite get myself
to do it
over the line. And then something happened at work, which meant I had to have the conversation with my boss when I was just not at all ready to have the conversation. But there was a cat I can tell you about that. There was a catalyst at work that made me, basically pull the trigger for me.
Wow. And first, thanks for sharing. And like you even said, on paper, it is fantastic. And it's a career path most of us will look forward to. But I like what you said, just looking into the future, because I can relate with that. I mentioned to you, working with Shell, one of the best companies. You recommend KPMG, I will recommend Shell. Right. And by the way, I was at KPMG's office last week.
Oh, really?
There was this KPMG Black Entrepreneurship Awards. It was last week. So I actually was at the office. It was amazing just seeing them organizing and encouraging young people to build stuff. And so by the way, so good company.
Nice office too.
Yeah, but back to what we were saying, it gets to that point where you have to probably think a bit deeper. And maybe is the whole thing about life. What is my life worth? What do I want to do with my life at the end of the day? I think for me, that was what triggered it for me. I can continue on this path. I have a fantastic career, but will I make as much impact as I would want to make? Not because I can't make impact from the role, but I think for me as well, I already had an idea of the kind of impact I want to make. And I just felt like as much as they would support me, and they were very supportive. In fact, I started this podcast while still in the company, and my boss got me to try to start something within the company, another podcast for the team. That's how supportive.
Yeah, that's great, right?
Yeah. So like I said, I got all the support, but I just asked myself, with the level of impact I want to make, whether I like it or not, at some point what I'm doing will not give me the time, right? And I can't scale what I want to do. So it was a difficult decision as well, because
it's always tough, right?
Yeah, you have to remind yourself over and over again, are you okay? What's going through your mind? But,
and your colleagues are like, what are you doing? You're crazy.
Everyone who truly loves you and cares about you will ask you like, are you okay? Yeah, so it's not, I always say to people, it's not bad when people actually ask you, but it's better when you are firm, you understand why you're doing it, and you try to communicate that to them. And most times if people love you, they will see how they can encourage you to get that done. Nobody's saying it's not going to be perfect. And I'm sure if you walk us through, how has it been since you left? Did it pick up as quickly as you expected, or have there been cycles?
Explain a bit about that. So no, it's been great. Let me just finish that bit on me leaving. I just want to explain about that catalyst moment, because it was pretty important in the process. I have a call with my boss. This is like summer 2021, and he said, "Oh, I've just got off the phone from the CFO at this company, and we were tendering for a really big piece of work with this company, and the tender process would have lasted about a year. It's like really long tender process, and then if we if we had won the work, it would have been like a 5 or 6 year commitment for me. And the CFO had called my boss and said, I want Mostyn on the team. Because I'd done some work for that company, for that CFO, a couple of years previously on a really, really big transaction. My boss calls me, he said, just come off the phone from the CFO and he wants you to be on the team. And that was like out of the blue for me. I wasn't prepared for that conversation, but I had my resignation letter drafted, but I hadn't sent it anywhere. I'd been thinking about the fear of regret, and that was making the decision. I was edging closer to the decision, but I hadn't pulled the trigger on it myself. But in that call, I couldn't say to Stuart, who was my boss, I couldn't say to him, "Oh yeah, okay, that's good. Yeah, happy to be on the team," because I knew that was going to lock me in for another 6-7 years. Wow. And because I was, say 95% certain that I was going to leave, I was going to, send my resignation letter. I couldn't do that in good faith, right? And one of the reasons why I didn't want to tie myself in for that amount of time, because I could have done that and then had a go at what I'm doing now. I know what would have happened. I would have finished that 6-7 year commitment. I would have been around 50 then, a few years off partner retirement age. I know I would have stayed. The financial consequences would have been much bigger for leaving. So I knew that if I had said yes to that particular project, and it was a great project to be a part of, right? It would have been, really good, really fun, great team, one of the biggest pieces of work in the firm. So it was a good opportunity. But I knew if I said yes to that, what I was actually saying no to was trying to set up my own business, doing what I'm doing now, which is the thing that I really, really wanted to do. And that, so I had to make the decision. Well, I had to have that conversation with Stuart there and there, which I wasn't expected to do, but I did. Similar to what you just describing about your situation at Shell, KPMG didn't want me to leave and looked at various different ways of sort of making me stay, different roles that I could do, all that, which was, really, really, really nice response. But I decided that I needed to get out of that, really the safety net and, that kind of like that ecosystem that I'd kind of grown up in and that I'd, been so successful in and enjoyed for so long to, have kind of go to the complete opposite end of security and safety and start with a blank sheet of paper with my own business. And that was 3 years ago now. So I left in September 2022. Yeah, 3 years in, I'm really pleased about the decision that I've made because, the mix of the executive coaching that I do, the talks that I do on companies at high performance and now Atomic Ambition, which is new this year, so it's about a year old now. It's very different from what I was doing before and I'm really enjoying it. And you may remember I said, one of the reasons that I was thinking about leaving was because that growth curve was getting less steep. I mean, the growth curve that I've had for the last 3 years, doing things, learning different skills, out of my comfort zone, all of that sort of stuff. It's been great. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about helping other people find something that is going to work for them because, well, you and I both experienced this, right? When you find it for yourself, you know how good it feels and impacts positively on all other aspects of your life.
Indeed. In fact, I was coaching someone yesterday, one of my clients, and she was actually saying like she has seen how much I enjoy what I'm doing. And we used to work together at Shell. And she was like, just knowing you as the very technical guy to this coach, it sounds different. It's obviously different, but I can see that whole joy and satisfaction. And like you said, I think people who know you will actually see you light up in that moment because you found your space. And guess what? It will inspire them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. A lot of my friends right now, I don't know if it's a good thing, but a lot of them are really driven to find their stuff and build things. And they're like, hey, we've seen you do it. And I've told them, hey, the finances, you have to sort that out because it won't just roll in as having a security with your salary. You need to plan for that. But there's this joy and satisfaction knowing you're impacting people with what you're doing and just helping transform people's lives. And I think that is something that I will do over and over again. Take that same decision because it's transformational and it's really satisfying. Yeah. So we get to the point where let's say someone is exactly where you were and they're currently dragging, but maybe they've not even started, they've not even written their letter. By the way, for me, it was quite different because I think I made the decision and I just wrote that letter. It didn't take me like up to 3 days to send it out.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't make the decision overnight. Like I've been thinking about it for almost a year.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Once I convinced myself, like, okay, this is what I want to do. I checked within myself, my spirit, my mind, my soul, everything. I'm like, and then obviously spoke to the people I love as well, just to tell them that, hey, this is the next step for me. And I've actually mentioned to them that I'm thinking of it. So, and then it got to the point, I'm like, I think this is the right time. They were like, okay, we know it's not going to be easy. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And I was like, yeah, I have. And like, okay, we're here to support you, whatever it is. And so for me, I just wrote the letter, like 2 days later, I just sent it. I'm like,
You're braver than I am.
Yeah, but let's come back to someone is probably in this situation. Like you said, more and more people are there. Maybe now people are more outspoken because of the environment. All right. Even I think some companies right now, they've opened that door to have that conversation. If you're not finding satisfaction in your role, maybe they might try to offer some other thing. But let's say there's this person who is currently where you were, and this person knows they want to do something different. Might not mean leaving the organization, might be something.
Very often it's a different role in that organization. For sure.
But they're scared. They feel stuck. They can't get themselves to have that conversation. How can they go around that? Do you have a framework, a system to guide people? What do you do?
Yeah, I can. So I take people through a process in Atomic Ambition, and let me see if I can explain it kind of simply, because it's a bit more involved, obviously, when you're going through the real thing. But the 3 main elements of it are the first one is really about who you are as an individual. And you just mentioned then about when you were making your decision about, did it feel right in my spirit? And I take people through an exercise to identify what their character strengths. So these are the things that make them them. And your character strengths will be different from my character strengths. But these are the things that are important to you, values, those sorts of things. But they're the things that make you you. And I always start there, because if you're going to make a decision that is, a big decision in your life, if you can link it back to how it's going to positively impact one of these character strengths, you can have a lot more confidence that it's going to be the right decision for you. So I always start with that. The middle part then is all around the types of activities that you do at work. And this is one part of this is what most people think of. So most people think of when they're thinking about a potential role change or step up or next step for them in their career, they look at one aspect of this, which is an important aspect to look at, which is what are the things that I'm good at? Always good to double down on the things that you're good at. But what people often miss is you don't just want to do the things that you're good at. You want to do the things that you're good at and that you enjoy and that give you energy. And what you'll find is the things that you're good at, things that you enjoy and that give you energy nearly always relate back to one of your character strengths or one or more of your character strengths. So if I give you an example for me, so my top 3 character strengths are hope, honesty, and social intelligence. And one of the things that I am good at and enjoy doing and that gives me energy is helping other people to be more successful in their careers, whether that's coaching somebody one-on-one or taking people through a group program in Atomic Ambition to make a big decision about their career. Because if you think about the activities that are involved in that, if you just take, like, say, one-on-one executive coaching, well, you've got to be hopeful about the future for that person. You've got to be honest with the person in terms of what, your reflections back to them and helping them see, a different perspective on their situation. And you also got to have sort of links strongly to social intelligence, a bit like emotional intelligence, and therefore, you've got to be able to pick up on the cues, what aren't they saying, all of that sort of thing to really understand, what's going through their thought process. So I get people to go through that exercise for themselves, identify what they're good at, the things that they enjoy doing, and the things that they...
Maybe if I may, we've not had this conversation before, but it's exactly the same process I take people through. For me, my character strength, as you call them, but we call it the core values. For me, it's integrity, excellence, and care. And I always tell people, your ability to know this thing, it already gives you a very rugged foundation to build any other thing. Sorry for cutting you, but I just wanted the audience to know that.
I love it.
Even without us ever having this conversation. So there's a structure to how some of these things are actually built. And that's what you're sharing right now. So you just carry on. I just wanted to share, we've not had this conversation, but in my program as well, we call ours the core values. And everybody has to have at least 3 of them that you can hold on to. And for me, offhand, you know them, just like you know yours.
Yeah. I take, I use 2 tools for that. So I either use the VIA character strengths assessment, which is, so people want to, look that up. That's a free character strength assessment that people can do, do for themselves. It's like a 20-minute questionnaire, but it's remarkably precise,
Right.
even though it only takes 20 minutes. That's called VIA, character strengths. And the other one that I use with my one-on-one coaching clients, I do a Hogan assessment. Hogan is one of the kind of longest standing psychometrics, where there's a core part of that called MVPI, which is the motives, values and preferences inventory. And that is effectively the character strengths or the core values that are important to somebody. So either do one of those. But you're right, linking those to these activities is the part that most people don't do. So most people just identify, what am I good at? I'll just do more of that, without really thinking about, do I actually enjoy doing that? And does it give me energy? And conversely, you also want to identify the things that you don't want to do. And you may well be quite good at some stuff, but you don't enjoy doing it, right? So if you're just focusing on the stuff that you're good at, which is what most people do, I've done this, therefore I should do more of it for the next step up, the bigger role. Well, if you don't actually enjoy doing that, or you find that you can do it, but it kind of drains you of energy, you're not going to be happy and fulfilled in the next role doing those sorts of activities. And what you'll also find is those types of activities are at odds with your character strengths. If you're like, again, take me, for example, I was good at the technical side of the role that I used to do in my previous career, but it didn't really, and when I say the technical side, I think there are a lot of rules around what the services that I had to deliver to clients. And, I was good at, following those rules and, solving quite complex technical problems for clients, but it didn't necessarily excite me or I'd look forward to that or, give me energy from doing it. And I think that's because, that type of work isn't really aligned with, hope and social intelligence and honesty. So it's aligned with some other character strengths. Some other people absolutely love doing that work, right? They'll have different character strengths than me. So I think it's really important to identify what those things are that you should do and also those things that you shouldn't do. And that's quite a detailed exercise to go through. The final bit that most people, I think, is why are you bothering to do this in the first place? What are the outcomes that you're looking for from your career? And if you speak to most people about what are the outcomes that you're looking for from their career, people will say, I want to be a CEO, I want to be a partner, or I want to, run my own business, or, I want to be director of marketing, whatever it is, right? People got their different aspirations. Some people say, I want to earn £250,000 a year, or, what they're talking about are the tangible outcomes from their career. And I think that's a mistake. Much better thing to look at is the emotional outcomes that you'll get from your career. And what I mean by that are, what are the feelings that if you achieve one of those things, so say you get that CEO role or the big salary or whatever it is, what's the emotional outcome for you? Because that's the thing that actually makes a difference to your life. It's the feeling that you get from having this particular thing. So, a very common tangible outcome that people want is a particular level of income. Well, the emotional outcome that a particular level of income gives most people is a feeling of security. So that's actually what they want. They want a feeling of security. The income level is a path to getting that. For some people, actually, the income level might be a different emotional outcome. So it might actually be, what can I do in my life if I reach a certain level of income? And that gives me an emotional outcome of maybe love, because I'm able to spend more time with my friends and family. Or it may give me an emotional outcome of joy because of the types of activities that I'm able to do with people that I care about. But it's the emotional outcomes that you really want. It's not really the tangible outcomes. And I think the reason why that is so important is because if you're only focusing on this narrow part of this process, which is what am I good at, and therefore I should just do more of it, which is what most people do, well, your range of possible opportunities of things that you can do is really narrow. If you go through this more holistic process, where you identify things that you're good at, that you enjoy, that give you energy, and you also identify things that you don't want to do, you might think, well, isn't that narrowing down the stuff that I can do? It's not, because what you're identifying is it's the emotional outcomes that I want, and therefore there are many different ways to fill or achieve those emotional outcomes using that set of activities that you actually want to do. So it actually broadens your opportunities rather than shrinking it down. And when people think, okay, well, actually, I can get my security, I can get my love, I can get my feeling of autonomy in a variety of different ways from, now a much broader range of roles, that each of which can use these skills, it means you're much more likely to find something that is a really, really good fit for you rather than just the next logical step. So, that's part of the process that take people through in Atomic Ambition. when you go through that process, because it's all linked and it's all tied back to your character strengths, where we started from, or to the values that you do in your process. When you link the things that you're doing back, or these activities that you should do back to your character strengths, what you also find is that your emotional outcomes are also likely to be linked back to your character strengths. It gives you a huge amount of confidence that the decisions that you're making are going to be the right decisions for you, because it's grounded in who you are, right? It's grounded in, the things that make you you. So if you're considering a role that doesn't tick those boxes for you, doesn't give you the emotional outcomes that you want, won't give you the activities that you want to do, doesn't agree with your values, you're not going to thrive in that role. You're not going to enjoy it. But when you find a role that meets all of those things, you can go into it with a huge amount of confidence that this is going to be a fantastic role, working environment, company culture, whatever it is that works for you. A surprising benefit, which I hadn't thought about this, but it's going to seem really obvious to you when I mention it to you. When I did the first version of Atomic Ambition at the start of this year, the people who went on to get new jobs as a result of going through that process, some internally, some at different companies, they said that I was able to get the job way more easily because I was able to articulate to the employer, in the interview process, why this was such a good job for me. And what most people do in an interview situation is they say why they're able to do the job. I've done this and this and this before, and that therefore qualifies me to do this particular role. And that's good, right? You need that, right? You need to be able to demonstrate your capability in the role. But when you're also able to articulate why that is such a good fit for you, because it aligns with your character strengths, the types of activities that you're good at, it'll have less of the things that you're not so good at, and it's going to give you these emotional outcomes. Not many people talk about that sort of stuff in an interview process, but it shows you've put a lot of thought into why this is going to be a great role for you. And from an employee's perspective, I've done hundreds of interviews over my time. From an employee's perspective, having somebody come and demonstrate that they're going to thrive in that role and they're motivated and enthusiastic because of these reasons that are grounded in who they are, you're like, okay, this is a really easy decision for me to make to hire this person. So that's a nice outcome as well.
Wonderful. This is a masterclass. But you're spot on, and I can relate with literally everything you just said, from the activities. And as an example, because I already knew my core values, one of the things I always knew I wanted to do was impact people through teaching. One of the first activities that came to mind was for me to become a lecturer.
Oh, right.
But I thought about it.
What would you have lectured in?
That exactly. Because if I had gone to lecture, I would probably lecture in engineering. And though I will be teaching people, but I know that's not in the area I want to be teaching. Okay, but so I want to teach.
The environment, as in like the context, the lecturing would have ticked a box for you, but the actual content of it. Now
that lecturing, I'm doing it through like a one-on-one coaching and like speaking engagements. So just like you said, I would have still lectured, but that activity would not have led to the satisfaction, because in the context in which I would have been doing that was not what I wanted.
Yeah. It resonates very strongly. I didn't mention it because it's can't get into all of the process, but one of the things that I get people to consider in kind of that middle part of that high level process that I just articulated is it's not just about the stuff that you're doing, like the activities, the random activities you end up doing at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, which actually makes a huge difference to your enjoyment of a role. People look at a job title or a level of seniority or a particular income level and think, when I get those things, I'm going to be happy and fulfilled in the role. And we know from, having, they're not the emotional outcomes, right? They're the tangible outcomes. But what you're actually doing day to day, people sometimes lose sight of the fact that if I get those things, they might look really good on paper. What does that actually mean for my, what are my days filled with? And they're not filled with activities that you enjoy doing. Then you're not going to feel happy and fulfilled in that role. But at the same time, if you're doing those activities in a working environment that doesn't align with your values, with your character strengths, you're never going to feel like you fit in. Indeed. It's always going to feel like a little bit not quite right. So in addition to identifying the activities that are, good for you, that give you energy, that you're good at, that you enjoy doing, you also want to identify the working environments that are going to be conducive to your success in the role. So your example there is like the working environment is kind of like would have been the lecturing, right? But the content, i.e. the day-to-day activity, engineering wouldn't have ticked that box. That's a great example.
Yeah. No, thanks for sharing. And maybe we'll end with this particular one from a team perspective, because you also have talks on like high performance. What are, maybe in 2 minutes, what are some barriers to having, like, one thing is having an individual perform, but another thing is having a team collaboratively perform. And most times you have different high flyers, and I know there's a lot of dynamics within that, but what are some things as a team people, maybe team leaders, should look at in making sure they build a high performing team? Yeah. What are some things they should consider?
I actually think this is really simple. So two main things are, what is the shared goal that we're trying to achieve? And is everybody's understanding of what that means the same? So you as the leader in a team could articulate, this is what we're trying to achieve, but particular team members could interpret that differently for what that actually means. So having a very clear definition of what it is that you're trying to achieve and why you're trying to achieve that. So what is it that we're all working towards? And then what is your role in the team? And is it actually transparent to other people what your role is and how it fits in with what they're doing? Sometimes if you just have the former, so you just have, okay, we kind of know what the goal is that we're all working towards, but we're not necessarily clear on each of our individual roles and how they tessellate, and how I can do something that's going to help you in your role and how that fits in with this other person, all of that sort of stuff. And people have visibility over what everybody else is doing and their contributions. If you don't have that second bit and you just have the goal, it doesn't really work. And conversely, if you have that kind of understanding of what everybody's meant to be doing, but what their roles are, but they've got different views of what the outcome is, again, it's not going to work. My take on this is that in some teams, even if you've got the shared goal, you will have a few people that are really driving the outcome. And that happens, I think, more often than not, because you haven't had those conversations amongst all the team members about what their respective roles are, how they fit together, and actually having visibility on what everybody is doing. I think it's got harder the last few years, particularly, if you're all in a team sat in the same part of an office all day, every day, working together, it's easier to see what everybody else is doing and to fit that together. When you don't have that situation at the moment, you've got to put other structures in place, which is perfectly possible, but a lot of companies or a lot of teams won't do that. So some of that cohesiveness and visibility of what everybody else is doing has become harder. But yeah, it's, as I say, I don't think it's difficult. Sorry, I don't think it's sort of hard to understand, but those are the two main components.
Thank you. And finally, how do you relax? How you perform? You help people perform and do stuff and atomic ambition and all of that, but how do you, as an individual, how do you chill? Because I believe rest and having fun is part of finding that satisfaction. What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely sort of rest is the other side of the high performance coin, right? So for me, the main things that I do are, I'm really into live music, and I have been since I picked up a guitar and sort of taught myself the guitar sort of on the first Oasis album many years ago. So sort of live gigs, festivals, nice. That's my sort of thing. I was lucky enough to go to Glastonbury earlier on this year, and it was beautiful. Amazing. Sunshine, really nice. I went to another festival in Wales called Green Man in August as well, with a whole bunch of my close friends from South Wales, where I'm originally from. So music, sunshine, friends, very much into that sort of thing. Can't do that every weekend. But yeah, that's one of my big passions.
Thank you. And once again, thank you for being on the podcast. It's been a pleasure having you and for sharing your story and your framework and everything. Guess people can easily reach you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn. There's only one Mostyn Wilson on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me. But also, if you just Google Mostyn Wilson, you'll find my website. You'll find Atomic Ambition. You'll find my YouTube. Sort of relatively lucky having a pretty unusual name, which makes me easy to find.
Amazing. Thank you. And to our audience, it's been a pleasure having Mostyn on this podcast. Listen to this, go to his page, follow what he does, and importantly, live a life by design and not by default. Something that when you think about, you'll be glad you lived that life, not a life you feel everyone should like, but something that really resonates with you. And I hope you go out there and do something you truly enjoy. Enjoy the rest of your day and see you in the next episode. Bye for now.